Hello and welcome to Sidequest. This is our weekly video game show here at Geekverse. I'm your host, Dilmus, and I'm joined by the ally, Kirklin Patzer. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing very good, sir. I'm happy to be here with you on this nice, here in Canada, it's a holiday, so we get
That's
a
true.
day off from work, so that's nice.
Get the day off work, so here we are working on
Yeah.
podcast stuff. But it's nice to do it earlier in the day, and then we don't have to record at 8 p.m. and I have to stay up late to
Exactly, yeah.
edit and upload and all that stuff, so it is nice to have that option. Today's episode is going to be a very chill, laid-back episode because there was not a lot of news out there, just one small thing that I want to talk about, and then really just games we've been playing, and then we're going to see how that goes, but we want to have a little bonus topic, depending on time, afterwards if we need a little bit more to talk about. So it should be a fun, chill episode, and let's get right into it. Kirklin, what have you been playing lately?
What I've been playing lately, a couple things to kind of just catch up on. I get it out of the way quick. Me and my old buddy from high school, Denzel, shouts out to Denzel, we jumped into a co-op Warhammer campaign, and I have not done co-op campaign, I think, since like the base game came out, that just had like the standard campaign, and then after 6 months or so they released like the big combining campaign. So we started a campaign on that, and we've done a co-op campaign in the past on like Warhammer 2, but they've made the online co-op just so much better in the third game. Like now you can actually do simultaneous turns because it's a turn-based game. So like instead of like me doing all my actions end turn, it goes to him, and then I like walk away, go do dishes for like half an hour, come back. Like it's just like a terrible system. Now we can just do all of our moves at the same time, which is so nice. Especially like those games, like once you get into some later turns, I swear to God, one turn could be like an hour. So if you had to just wait for someone, like that would be so terrible. But no, it's going really well. It's challenging, especially like I feel like a lot of the times if you're playing a single player campaign, you can kind of cheese it sometimes. Like maybe if a battle doesn't go well, or if you don't get an ambush, like maybe it's a 70% chance for ambush, you end turn, and it doesn't succeed. It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna just reload that save, and hopefully that ambush works. Like you don't really do that online, so like
you got to live with these consequences.
yeah, there's been a couple times where like I had a big siege battle, and then typically if I was doing like a similar campaign and I failed that siege, it's like, okay, this is just ending my whole campaign. I'm just gonna start a new one, because like you lose a lot of your forces, you lose a lot of your momentum, and a lot of times, especially on harder difficulties, like you need that early momentum. Like you got to just keep steamrolling, otherwise you're just set back so much. And then on harder difficulties, the AI has like recruiting cheats, so they can just like recruit a lot faster than you and just have like way bigger armies. So like one of my key sieges did not work out well. Like I did get defeated, but it was pretty bloody battle. Like my enemy was really like taken down too, and it actually ended up playing out pretty fun. So because we're just kind of rolling with the punches, like you just kind of, well, that didn't work out, let's see how we can kind of recover from this. It's been like a really fun, unique campaign actually. And we're playing as the High Elves, and we're pretty closely situated, which is nice.
So wait, are you the same nation that you're running together, or the separate ones that are both High Elves?
Different nations, but like each race, let's say, has like 6 leaders or something like that. So he's one of them, and then I'm basically Lady Galadriel. Like that's basically who this leader is, and nice. Yeah, and then he's the Shadow King, which is kind of like
together.
Yeah, exactly. Like we started away, but then like the goal was to just kind of like find each other, unite, and then now we can kind of support each other. And I think we played like 20 turns on our first the first session, and that's, I don't know, like maybe 4-ish hours of playtime, and it's been lots of fun. It's been especially like my funds have been really low because, like I said, like I lost that key battle, and then I kind of had to recoup, and then like my funds are just like in the red, and it's like, hey, well, now I really have to win these battles, otherwise I'm just bankrupt. And then I have been winning those battles, so it's been like, oh my God, we're coming back, and it's just, we're playing on like very hard difficulty, and it's so chaotic. Like there's so many enemies around, and they're just like constantly building up their forces, and hopefully we'll succeed in the campaign. I'm pretty confident. Like him and I have played a lot of this game, so I feel confident that we can do it. And High Elves are definitely the race I've probably played.
I forget, is win condition taking out everyone, or can you end the game with multiple
There's different
nations
victory conditions,
kind of like Civ in that way.
Yeah. Like there's like short.
So you
victory.
don't have to eventually backstab your friend here. You guys could work together the whole way.
No, we were joking that we would do that because like Ulthuan, which is like, it's just like an island, and that's like the High Elves hub. And then we were joking, it's like, hey, well, once we once we defeat the Dark Elves, that's like the High Elves' main enemy. Then we're gonna have to just fight over Ulthuan.
Yeah.
we'll figure out who gets the donut, 'cause it's kind of a donut shape on the
Yeah.
map. So, but no, we probably won't do that. And
Nice.
the last like campaign that we didn't finish it. I think it was just one of those things where your schedule gets busy, and then the third
Yeah.
game ended up coming out. It's like, yeah, we're not gonna jump back into Warhammer 2. So, but it's been fun. We've been trying to coordinate this for like weeks, and then randomly I just messaged him like Saturday morning. I'm like, hey man, I'm pretty free today. Let's jump into this. So, and it worked out. So it's been lots of fun there, and I'm excited to jump back in there, and hopefully we can succeed.
That's a good quick segue. And I know you have maybe other things to shout out, but one thing that was announced this week is that a sequel to Alien Isolation is in the works, which is the same studio as the Total War studio, of course, Creative Assembly.
That's so
right?
surprising that the like very different games, very
I know.
different like universes as well. I like
that was
though.
such a out of pocket thing when me and Taylor doing that retro and looking at like what studio actually made this game. But yeah, they're finally making a sequel after 10 years, which is kind of crazy that they're coming back to it. But I guess Alien is doing pretty well right now, hot off Romulus and all that. So yeah, what do you think about that sequel? I'm personally pretty excited for it because that game held up super well, like visually and gameplay wise. There was some shortcomings to it, but overall it was a really fun time to go back to it, and it felt pretty modern. So it's I'm curious what they're going to see with like what they're going to do with 10 years more of work under their belt.
Yeah, I think there were so many things that they had going for them for that game. Like you mentioned, the visuals, like those totally hold up. The overall, just like you have like their kind of the original Alien score, just like an unsettling like tone going on, and just the whole vibe. Like they really captured that well. So I'm all for another one. I never got through that game fully. I got a little scared in some sections.
It's a long game.
I put the controller down.
Yeah.
But yeah, like not only the visuals look great, the atmosphere looked great, but like the whole AI with the alien was really good, right? Because it would learn your patterns. You can't just. I feel like I usually find a strategy that works well for me in those games, and I feel like once I got to that point that the alien started just bopping me, I was like, this is too scary of a game. I can't do this. I'm not witty enough.
If you throw too many decoy grenades, it'll eventually learn that you're throwing a decoy grenade and go to where it thinks it threw it from. Like, yeah, really cool stuff. Yeah.
There's been I feel like the last good scare I had that game was like I was hiding underneath the desk and the xenomorph like went by me. And then it like instantly like turned around, just went underneath the desk, and it just gave me like the biggest jump scare. And but
you were hiding under too many
really
desks.
exciting.
It knew you were knew that was your favorite thing to do.
100%. But because that game holds up so well, I'm excited to see what they're able to do with the more modern technology and what engine it would be on. I don't know if we have details.
Yeah, I forget what the engine of the first game was, and I don't even know what they use for like Total War and whatnot in terms of engines. But I'm curious to see what they do, because I feel like Isolation ends in such a way where it's like, I want to say it's a cliffhanger, but it's more of just like a tease ending. And I feel like that means in a way that like they could just do a very direct sequel to that first game and continuation with some of the characters that survive, or they could just pivot and just kind of in the way that like a lot of the other Alien movies just pick up at some random spot, like Romulus, for example. It just exists in that world, but really isn't that closely connected to any other movies. I feel like they could do the same thing there. I wonder how fans would feel about that, given some of the ending of the first Isolation. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what they do. There's really no other information. They just announced that they're working on it, so I'm sure it's at least a couple years away. But that's pretty exciting. I'm excited to see what they do there, and hopefully I just wanted them to take a few lessons from that first game, because I think they did a really good job, but just in terms of buttoning some of it up and taking out some of the repetition and just making it a bit like shorter and sweeter of an experience, That's kind of what I would aim for. But yeah, it was a really cool game. Once again, go back, check out that retrospective that me and Taylor did earlier this year. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But anyway, what else?
Sorry, I just pulled up Creative Assembly's
Yes.
the company, and I'm just looking at like their list of games because I was curious. So it's just like all Total War titles, like all the historical ones, like all those.
Yeah.
And then Alien Isolation, and then Halo Wars 2, which is like, okay,
right.
Halo, different IP, but like it's still a strategy game, so it makes sense. But Alien Isolation is just the one kind of outlier, and
it is.
I feel like
I don't think they ever have done another first person game, so that was
yeah. And I feel like
that game started as like a third person game and then eventually turned into a first person.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really surprising. Actually, I feel like that really changes the whole experience of playing it through a first person versus
there's some footage out there of like the third person gameplay. It's kind kind of jarring to look
I feel
at.
like it'd be a lot less scary, actually. Just
I think
like,
that was probably a big part of the change. Like, I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
it wasn't originally as much of a horror game, but then as they were play testing it and prototyping it, it felt way scarier than they expected, rather
Yeah.
than an action game, perhaps. And they went that direction. I'm not exactly sure, but it's pretty cool nonetheless.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. No, that's cool. What else have I been playing? Oh, I got the big itch to jump back into Baldur's Gate, and then Shay was just
I
working
too
or
jumped
oh
back
my
into
God,
Baldur's
there you
Gate
go.
this week. That is
That's
amazing
awesome.
timing.
That's amazing.
I love that.
So
Something's
yeah,
in the air for Baldur's Gate.
I don't know what it was. I was just like, man, I really just want to jump in there and roll some dice and just
Yeah.
tackle some different situations. And yeah, Shay and I had a campaign that we were just progressing with together, and like I still want to play that one with her. I booted up our save just because I couldn't really remember exactly where we were, and we were in this like, I don't know, just a swamp area, and it was awful. It was like the boss was just destroying us.
Yeah, okay. In Act 1 still? I think I
Yeah,
know
like
what
a
you're talking
hag
about.
lady.
Yes, the hag start. Yeah, that was a
Man.
hard boss fight, man. Holy, I remember that
Man,
one.
we like I'm pretty sure we tried that like 5 or 6 times, and then it's just like instead of just backtracking and leaving, it's like just turn the game off and we'll just frustrate.
And
with
don't
that.
play it
And
for 6 months.
yeah, exactly. So then I was like looking at it, and then I was like, oh, whatever. So I made a new character, obviously, because
Okay.
a single player playthrough, and I'm playing as a warlock.
Interesting.
And
Cool.
I'm really like doubling down on my I'm doing like a full on like blade lock strategy where you just like buff, like I have like a nice 2-handed weapon, but because you have like the pact of the blade, you get proficiency with it, and it's really really strong build.
Nice.
Actually, like right now, like I think I'm like right at the end of Act 1 right now on my play. It's going a lot smoother than it would have been like when Shannon, not again anything against her. It's just like we had no idea how to play the game like at all. So just like
Yeah.
certain strategies, or like really getting creative with how you're gonna handle certain situations, even just certain characters that we didn't even come across. Like we didn't even meet Gale on our playthrough of of like the first time we went through. We saw like the portal, and it's like I'm not touching that. That looks scary. So we just
Yeah.
kind of bypassed it. So
Man, that's funny how early in that game, like even Lae'zel, I think, can just die really early in that cage
Yeah.
if you don't save her and stuff.
yeah, so I just like didn't go like see her, so I don't have her right now on my single player playthrough. My party consists of it's like myself, Shadowheart, Will, and Karlak, which is like pretty actually like really
Will.
good.
Wait, who's Will?
He's the dude.
Oh, right. His name is
The
spelled
Blade of the
kinda
Frontiers.
spelled differently, but I know who you're talking about, yeah.
WYLL, yeah. So
yeah, okay,
I got
gotcha.
I guess 2 warlocks right now in my party, and then Karlak is just
Yeah,
such
are
a
you gonna? Is
powerful
that
character.
part of the strategy, the double warlock thing, or are you gonna?
I feel like I just had him for like story reasons. Like I was just kind of
Yeah.
invested in his story, and then because it's nice in that game too. I didn't really realize how easy it is to just respec or like make a new class, or you
Right.
can reclass certain characters. I don't really want to do that because I feel like their starting classes just fit really thematically with what their overall story is.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I'm not really dual classing or anything like that. I've never really done that in D&D. I've always kept it pretty simple, just like the one class and committing to that. But no, it's going really well. I'm playing on tactical, like the difficulty is a little bit
Ooh.
harder.
Okay.
I don't know, just because I really wanted to try and learn like the combat really well. And
Yeah.
it's funny, there's like certain like canon characters that Shay and I either killed or like seen were killed like on our first playthrough that are like, now that I'm experiencing them, I'm like, man, you're like a main character. Like I can't believe like just how much the playthrough can change depending on where you kind of go, and you can kind of kill like anyone, or anyone can kind of die. And there's many characters that like we just never got like a dialogue from them at all, because we just like assume that they look sketchy, so we just like snuck attack them or like destroyed a bridge that they'd be on, so they just like fell into the abyss. We don't even like know what they're carrying. So
Yeah.
it's funny just comparing the two playthroughs in that sense. So after I'm like right at the end of Act 1 now. I'm in the Underdark right now on that one character, and I was just like, I went to Shay, I'm like, man, I feel like if we want to jump back in this game, I feel like we should just make like a new save, because I feel like there's so many things that we just like completely like.
I'm sure you'd blast through it because like you've gotten to Act 2
yeah.
pretty damn quick too.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like
Yeah.
I think our total play time on that save is like 14 hours, whereas on this one for me it's like 5, and
Yeah.
I'm further along like story wise than we would have been together. And
Yeah.
of course you're like learning the game though, and you're kind of 4 of those hours probably spent in character creation the first time. Who knows? So but no, it's been awesome. I'm glad I jumped back in there, and I'm very much wanting to jump back in there with Shay because we had a lot of fun. I think it's a really great like 2-player game as well. Just how it works. Like I could be in a cutscene and you could be in a different cutscene, and it's not
really
like
cool.
pausing.
No
So
games make that work as you want it to,
Yeah.
except for that one. It just feels you can choose to kind of just listen in on their combos if you want, or you can turn that setting off and just kind of live your own little life. So it's pretty cool how they made that work.
Oh, 100%. And something else that's new to the game that wasn't in it last time I played was they have like a workshop, like mod manager on console, which like, okay, I know PC had it, but like on console, they just had, it's kind of how I guess like Bethesda games, they kind of added that to console. I guess specifically Skyrim.
Like but they charge you, they nickel you for
exactly.
everything.
It's like kind of grimy, and like the mods are terrible. It's like the most, like just I don't know, Bethesda handpicked like mod
$10 for like a helmet.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Whereas this one, I don't think there's a cost. I didn't make an account, but it seemed like you can just download them, and like some of them are actually pretty sweet. Like of course they got like the aesthetic changes one, but one of them is just like it removes like the cap on your party size, so you could have like 10 people on your crew.
Damn,
and it's nice because it actually scales with the difficulty. Like the more people you add, the more difficult combat will be.
Nice.
I didn't really dabble in that one. I feel like it could get pretty overwhelming.
That's what I would do on a second playthrough.
Yeah, no, exactly,
that was
right?
a really, really cool thing.
And just the way certain characters bounce off each other. Like if you meet Gale, for example, and then you talk to like, I don't know, Astarion or Shadowheart, like they'll react to certain characters. So it'd be cool to kind of get just that background dialogue with more people involved.
Yeah.
So it's cool that that's included because that definitely wasn't on last time that I had played the game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I felt like when I'm playing through the game, it doesn't feel like one of those games that has companions that I want to frequently switch them out and do different things. Like there maybe
especially
like
they have stories, right? Like you like a quest that you're following along.
Like there was even some big, vampire quest line, and there's like, one of the companions is the vampire guy who's like lined up for that. But I'm like, this guy's so underleveled, and I think if you switch to him and you haven't used him for hours, they like give him some levels to catch him up. But I'm still like, man,
everybody
party,
levels up the same, but you just have to like, I don't know.
I feel like I would feel less invested because like I didn't go on this journey with him and like learn his moveset. Whereas right now I have such a solid crew of 4 that I just haven't switched out anyone in my party in like 30 hours of game time pretty much. So that's something that would be really cool. I definitely want to dabble with that on another playthrough. So that's a cool shout out. I didn't even realize that the mod stuff was there on console. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, obviously it's so much more expanded on PC. It's kind of free reign with what you can do on there, but it's nice to see on there, and also that it's not like the Bethesda thing where you have to pay like $10 for like a shitty armor. Yeah, it's like robbery. Like that's crazy that they're charging that much for it, and there's no need for it. Like it's clearly free and easy to get on PC. It's just they're business people trying to get money out of the fans, but. No, Baldur's Gate. It's been great, man. I'm glad I jumped back in there, and it's good.
Yeah, it's been really fun for me jumping back in there too. I've probably put in another 10 to 15 hours in the last couple weeks as I got back in. I got to Act 3. It's funny. So much of my motivation playing the game was like I didn't really love Act 2 that much, to be honest. Like just the setting of it, I found it was a bit too samey, and like I don't know. I wanted more exploration. It felt a little linear, I suppose. And so much of my motivation playing it back then was like, man, I really just want to get to this city. I want to see this city of Baldur's Gate. I'm sure it's huge. I just want to get there. And then I got there, and then like all my motivation just like faded away. And then I spent like a couple hours in the city, and then kind of just didn't play it for 6 months. Like I had a very similar situation to you there, just at a different point in the story. So jumping back in has been really fun. And so the first thing I did was like, okay, I'm just going to very thoroughly explore the city. I just did like a huge lap, go into every building, every door, try to find every shop, kind of get all the side quest threads that I could, see what's going on. And I did all of that. And then I was looking at the map, and then I was like, man, I feel like I didn't go into every door, even though I felt like I did. So I did like a whole nother lap and found like a bunch more shops and things I hadn't been to, including there's one like church that you can go into, and the guy there sells some equipment, and he had like amazing equipment, the exact stuff I needed for my build. And I just spent like 7,000 gold because I never really bought anything in the game because in Act 2 I feel like there's like no shopkeepers and stuff. So I had like 14 grand and I never really bought anything. So I just spent so much money on this one shopkeeper, like kitting out my characters. which was really fun. And yeah, I've just been like, so much of the stuff in Act 3 obviously is like the resolution to a bunch of the side quest storylines. So that's been fun, capping off some of the character storylines, finding other random side quests. At one point, I was walking through the city and just found like a manhole in the ground to go down to the sewers. I was like, okay, what's down here? And then I spent like 6 hours in the sewers because it's just a massive area.
Dude, yeah.
Like, it's humongous.
There was a well that Shay and I found that we went
Yeah.
down, and it's just like, man, we should not have gone down here. This is like a labyrinth.
I know, because I was like in the middle of something too, and I was like, I'm just gonna go check this out. But then, you kind of get suckered into it, and it's funny, like I just kept leaving the sewers in different spots, and I would end up in like some building that was locked from the outside, and I was very curious about, and that just kept happening. I kept popping up in the city all over these random spots. So that was really fun. And I guess I won't talk spoilers about certain things since you're kind of back in there now. But really, the one thing that has been super exciting for me and my party is like, I have Karlak, and she's like a fighter type. And it's like nothing really that surprising or crazy happens when you level up. She just like gets more attacks and gets stronger and more health and all that. But one of the people in my party is Jahira, who's a druid. And that has been so fun to see, like, the transformations you get at higher levels. I finally have one now where I can just turn into a velociraptor, pretty much.
Oh my God,
that has
awesome.
multiple attacks. He can, like, spit corrosive acid at people, has, like, a pounce ability. Super duper strong, and that's been just so much fun to use. So, yeah, like, my party is so solid at this point. We're just, like, a very well-oiled machine. So I've just been, like, cruising through it. And even some bosses that have, like, insane amounts of health seem like they're going to be impossible, but somehow I can just combo tons and tons of damage out. So it's been really satisfying. I just love the combat in this game.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that would be like my favorite thing about it, my biggest takeaway. But I guess as like a fan of tactics games, and this is kind of in that realm, but a little more freeform, just so many options. I just love it. It's so fun.
Oh, for sure. I feel like that was the big thing on this playthrough, like the second time around now, is I'm just so much more effective, I think, at the combat, like especially just targeting like one target with like all your members. Like it's so effective. Just focusing like whoever like all at once as opposed to kind of spreading it out, and then people start getting healed, and then it's like, oh my God, this is just getting drawn out. You go into a new room and more people are like getting, and like I feel like that was kind of our first experience because we just didn't know what to do. It's like, okay, let's just go to this room, or like maybe Shay and I were like spread out, and then she'd be in a room, I'd be in a different room, and we're like both entering combat at the same time alone, and it's just awful. Like the goblin, what's it called? The goblin hideout, I guess.
Camp,
like in Act 1, like that took us so many tries to go through, and I swear to God, we killed every single person in there. Like it was just like, hey, well,
there's
we
like
gotta
40 of them. It's insane. Yeah.
And then it's like you take them out, and then you leave, and then there's like more goblins outside that we all had to take out, and like that was just brutal combat. Whereas when I did it now, like I was a lot more strategic with it. I was kind of like, I still took them out. Like I freed the druid Halsin, and I didn't even know he was there the first time that we played. So like when you free him and like he's in his bear form, like it's just so much more effective.
Yeah, he died really early in my campaign. Yeah.
So like it's great that we just get completely different experiences, even though we're like treading the same path. And the game is linear, but like because people do have permadeath, like you can totally change the game that way. So it's been really, really fun to jump in there, and it feels like a whole new experience, even though like I'm treading the same path that I did on the first playthrough.
Right on. Yeah, that's funny that we both just randomly decided to jump
unplanned
back into that at the same time.
Unplanned.
That is hilarious. Cool. Any other shoutouts, or is that's what you've been playing?
Yeah, that's pretty much been it, honestly, the last couple weeks there.
Sounds good. Okay, I have two more update ones and then a new experience to talk about. So a couple updates last week. Me and Travis were talking about Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I was close to the end. I've now beat it, and I've got pretty much like 100% completion. I went through, did every side quest in the game, which there was like 50 of them. It was like a ton of side quests. Some of them are pretty short, but others are really expansive. Like they take you to other like dungeon areas that you've never been to, fought like exclusive bosses that you would never see. I think that was my biggest takeaway from this game in general, is that the side quest design was just amazing. Like nothing was just a basic fetch quest, or if it was like prettied up in a couple ways that made it really interesting. But yeah, like exclusive areas, like finding bonus things, good challenges, like it's just really, really fun side quests, some really surprising ones. And then like the rest of the collectibles, that was fun to get all that. And I think, a funny thing for me, after we did our episode last week, I listened to a couple other podcast reviews of it, and just hearing how other people have decided to like solve different puzzles and problems in the game because it's so freeform with the spawning the echo system. Funny just hearing like other people's strategies for things and how that just like, oh, it made the game so easy doing it this way. And like I just either didn't think to do that, or like certain echoes I didn't even get until I was pretty much like done with the game already. I just think it's such a cool game to hear other people's experiences, because everyone's gonna have like a slightly different experience with it. So I love this game. I think it's fantastic. It is exactly the kind of freeform open game that I want, but still like kind of small enough that it doesn't take too long to get through all of it. And it's one that as soon as I was done, I just wanted more and more and more. And that's why I went and did like all the collectibles, did all the side quests, and even after that, I was like, man, I want like DLC. I want like a couple extra dungeon areas to go experience like some of the other things that I didn't even unlock until later on. So yeah, really, really good time. I highly recommend that game. I just had a amazing grand time with it. It was super fun. So shout out to Zelda.
Hell yeah.
And then my UFO 50 game of the week. I decided this is going to be a new segment here on Sidequest, Kirklin. I'm kind of picking two. I'm doing a 2-for-1 here, and I'll explain why. So, two games that I've just been loving is one of them is called Velgress in there, and this is the one I was talking about, where it's kind of like Ice Climbers, if Ice Climbers was like fun and a modernized version of it, where it's pretty simple. You're just jumping, climbing through this tower, and then whenever you jump like I guess beyond the halfway point of the screen, this like spike roller kind of rolls up from the bottom of the screen. So the bottom of the map is always like, you're always going to die if you hit the bottom of it. So you're constantly climbing, but anytime you jump on a platform, it starts to fade out. So like if you jump on a cloud, it fades after like half a second, and then like blocks will take like a full second, so you have a little bit more time. But it's just like a super reflex heavy game, really fun, just simple platformer. All the while you have a gun, you're taking out enemies, you're picking up gold, you're making it through, and it's kind of like a roguelike in that way that it's randomized layouts every time. And so that was one that it like took me a long time to get the hang of it, but once I did, it just like puts you in such a fun flow state. It's such a just fun platformer. And then I got the cherry on it, which is like the bonus objective, which required you to like take out some specific enemies in each level, get these keys, and then make it to like a whole secret last world, and then beat that as well. So it was just a super fun time. I probably spent like 3 hours on it maybe overall to like figure out everything and beat everything in it. So yeah, great time. Shout out to Velgress. And then the other one I wanted to shout out is a game called Overbold. And the reason I'm pairing them together is because they both feature the same main character. It's kind of like a spin-off game of one another. So you play as this character named Alpha, who's a fun little protagonist. But Overbold is a really cool game. It's kind of like a top-down little arena game where it's set in the same like rectangular arena. You are a simple character. You can walk around. You can shoot your gun. And that's pretty much it. It's very basic. And then in each of the 4 corners of the map, there's these spawners. And so as you're going through, like enemies are just coming out of these spawners. You got to take them out. First level is very basic, and then after that, the really fun system to it is, one, there's a shop, so depending on how much money you have, you can buy upgrades for your gun, upgrades for your character, your health, upgrades for your bombs, that kind of thing. And then you can also choose to kind of roll additional enemies into the level. So when you spawn, like if I go into level 2, there's going to be some random enemy type that I'm going to fight. But then I can like up the ante, so I can add, okay, I'm going to add maybe 3 or 4 rounds of extra enemies in there. So now I have to fight a lot more things, but then the reward's going to be a lot higher. And so it's kind of this
like
constant,
Loop Hero a little bit, reminds me.
Yeah, a little bit. Always this constant risk reward of like, okay, do I want to attack on more enemies? But like, am I going to be able to take them all out?
Yeah.
And whenever you add enemies, you don't know which. There's like 7 or 8 enemy types. You know, some of them have projectiles, some of them just chase you down, some of them are like exploding pumpkin bombs, like hobgoblin style. So you never really know what you're gonna get. So it's just like, oh, I could roll it, and it might be a really easy enemy type that's not an issue at all, or it could be just like lava blocks that go on the level, so you have less places to walk. And it's just like that push and pull is so fun. I'm always getting like a little bit greedy.
Nice.
But you have to like get really strong, because the final level of it, which I made it to, like the first time I played the game, I didn't even realize you could like add additional enemies. So it was pretty easy. It was like I was fighting like 5 enemies each time, pretty easy. But then I made it to the final boss level, and it's like some huge boss and like 1 million enemies. So the idea being that like you need to get your character really powerful if you're going to take down that boss. And the only way to do that would be the up to ante in these other levels and get your character like really, really strong. So it's this very simple game, but it's so addictive. It's just one of those games that you always just want to do one more run. It's super duper fun. So shout outs to Overbold. UFO 50 is endlessly great. I've spent like 30 hours in it now, and there's still like 20 games I haven't even touched yet in the experience. Like, it is such an expensive thing. It's so value. So shout outs to UFO 50. How about with that, we take our first ad break of the show, and we will be right back. All right, we are back. Kirklin, I have a very fun game that I'm excited to talk to you about. In the last week or two, started and finished Outlast 2.
Oh man!
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Get into the Halloween vibe. I like it.
Oh yeah, scary games. It's that time of the season. I've been waiting to play Outlast 2 until October here. So for anyone who hasn't listened to every Sidequest episode, earlier this year, all four of us got together and did a review for Outlast Trials, the multiplayer Outlast game that came out earlier this year. And then like a month or two later, I went back and played through Outlast 1 and the Whistleblower DLC, and it was the first time I ever played that game. And now here I am playing Outlast 2. So first, I wanted to ask you, Kirklin, because I re-listened to a couple of those bits just to remember how much we had all played. And then one time you said that you had just started the game, and then in another episode you mentioned that you were playing like a raft sequence and stopped there. But that's like really deep in the game. So like, how much of this game have you actually played?
I think what ended up happening was I started the save like on my own and then only got like early on, and then I went over to a buddy's house and he was like halfway through the game and I was playing that, and then just I don't know, something to do, and then that one, because I was so invested in the story, I ended up actually like just watching like a YouTube walkthrough. I never finished it, but I was just like, I don't know, like I don't really want to play this game because I remember hating the raft sequence, but but like I don't know, I at least wanted to see kind of what the story was following. So kind of split memories on exactly where it was in that, but like on my own, definitely I only got, I don't know, like an hour in, or like not that far.
Still in like the town kind of sequence, the farm 100%. Area kind of thing.
100%, yeah. But very curious as to what you felt about that one.
Yeah, it's a pretty mixed experience overall. Yeah. I guess to start with the parts that I didn't like. So the thing that this game does is it, different. So Outlast 1, takes place in the insane asylum, and then like at the start of the game, you're outside of the asylum, and then you leave the asylum, and then there's like a small garden area. But for the most part, it's like the whole game is inside, right? And Outlast Trials is very like Saw-like, and you're sometimes in like what feels like an outdoor environment, but it's always like inside of a giant warehouse. Like it's very inside. So it was interesting. It's kind of a breath of fresh air that Outlast 2 is set like mostly outside, and then there is like the end of the game is in like a mine area, so that's pretty, interior section. But I like right off the bat, it felt a very different vibe to it. But what it's doing is like, so it starts out, you're in like these farm, like kind of Resident Evil Village style type thing, this kind of old wooden cabin energy. And then there's that kind of sequence, and then you go through and there's like a deep section just in the woods where you're just lost in the woods pretty much. There's the raft sequence, and there's like a mine sequence, and then little things interstitial in between that. But then also as you're playing through it, the game will randomly cut to these school sequences. Did you ever play any of the school sequences in your playtime, or do you remember those at all?
I don't remember the school sequences, no. Yeah,
so it cuts like really. The way it cuts is actually really cool. Like you'll be running away from an enemy in the woods, and maybe you'll see like a cabin. You'll go and bust through the door, and then immediately you'll bust through the door, and then you're like in the school. Like the transitions are really quick. There's no loading screen between them, so they do a really good job of the transitions. But then you're just in this school, and it's kind of like it's almost like the origin story of your character and some like trauma that he had of a friend of his who died as a kid, and it's very cryptic in the first few hours, and then like towards the end of the game is when it like actually reveals what happened in that school. But I did not like the school sequences at all, and I think it's a cool idea. Like the transitions are really good, but I feel like if there had been like 3 or 4 school sequences throughout the the game's like 8 or 9 hours, if there had been like 3 or 4 school sequences, I think it would have worked and added to it. But instead, there's like probably close to like 10 sequences of it. So you're constantly going back there. It feels a lot more linear. I found like I never knew where I was supposed to go in the school, and not in like a fun horror way of like, oh man, it's so tense. I'm on the edge of my seat. I don't know where to go. But it just ended up being that I got to pull up a guide because I'm like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go in the school because there's doors everywhere. And then like you'll go in one room, and then like a door that was locked before will now be unlocked. But it's like, how would I know that other than just going to click on every door? So it just like the pacing was not good. There was like a horror. There's like a evil demon, that's an imaginary demon that's in the school chasing you. But those sequences feel very linear and not like hiding in lockers or hiding behind certain rooms or closing things off. It just feels very closed off. And I just found that like it cut the tension of the regular game so much, where like you're in an intense situation, someone's chasing you, you're running away, and you're like, okay, if I get through this door, maybe I can hide in this building. But then it would, like, as I said, like cut to the school sequence, so it kind of takes the tension away from the intensity of those moments. So I just overall felt like it really slowed the game down. It took away the tension of the other stuff. And like I never wanted to be there. The school stuff was never more interesting than like the regular games areas. So it just always felt like a slog to get through it. And since there's so much of it in the game, it just like overall that was kind of what ruined the game for me, unfortunately. Like if those sequences were just taken out, I think I would have enjoyed the game 300% more overall.
It sucks too because it seems like they were really committed to that, like being a part of the story of like, yeah, we'll get these sequences, especially, I don't know, like on the surface, it might be nice to get taken out of the setting of like the just like the wilderness, so like the woods or whatnot. But I'm curious how do those sequences end? Like when you're done with the school, were you just back in the cabin and Buddy's like right there ready to chop you up?
It's the same thing where like, yeah, you'll pop through a floorboard and then you're like, that transitions immediately back in. But that's the thing. That's what also makes the main game areas feel so disconnected is, like I said, you'll bust through one of those doors, get teleported to the school. You'll bust through some other random door at the end of the school. Then you'll be back in like a kind of similar area, but it's not connected. It's not one continuous area. It's like now you're like, you're in that house, but now you're on like the second floor in like some other door, and then like the enemy that was chasing you is like nowhere to be found now. So the idea is that like your character's kind of hallucinating, I guess. Like you are technically traveling through the real world while you're in the school, but it's not like a one-to-one comparison. It's just kind of wherever they decide to do the cuts. So that was the thing too, is like I feel like the first bit of the game when you're in the farmland area, really interesting. Like I found it was much more expansive than some of the areas in Outlast 1 in particular, where it's like you can go multiple pathways, and because of that, it makes it a bit freakier because you're like, I don't even know where I am. I don't know where these enemies could be. It feels like the bounds of the map are less defined, which makes it a bit more freaky. But I found like those sequences kind of cease to be later on because you're doing so much of the school stuff, and it ends up being so much more linear where you just got to run from this door to that door. And then there was a couple of those like slightly more open areas, but I also felt like I was barely hiding in lockers or barrels or like under tables in this game just because of the structure of it wasn't really demanding that. It was more trying to focus on some of these story bits, but I think it just ended up being, it made neither of them work as well. Like if it was just the one, even the school doesn't feel like one big connected area either. It feels very disjointed where you're in one random hallway with two classrooms, and then like that doesn't connect to the area where you're going to the school's pool and bathrooms, and like it all feels very disconnected, unfortunately. So that's the biggest bummer of the game overall. But now to get into some more positive things, I think what really surprised me first off was the visuals of this game are amazing. Like the first area where it's like the fog and the lighting looks so good and creepy and atmospheric. The buildings and all the grass, you're going through the farms and like the cornfields and stuff look really good. The first time you find water, the water looks really good. Like just compare, like, because the first game was 2013, right? And this was 2017. And then Trials obviously came out earlier this year. But like this game looks way better than Trials, for example. I know that's trying to do something a bit different, but just in terms of visual quality, like this game looks fantastic. And even like the character models and things like that. So I think that was one of the things that surprised me, because especially, after just playing Trials earlier this year, I kind of expected it would kind of be somewhere in between 1 and 3, but it's like, no, it's clearly like the best looking game, which I think is something that adds a lot to horror games in general. When it looks really good and realistic, you tend to feel more immersed in it, and then the horror elements can like work even better. Yeah. I find that something that works really well with these Resident Evil remakes compared to like playing the old blocky polygon ones. Like it's scarier if it feels more realistic, at least for me, typically.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's interesting you said that, because I feel like I kind of have that memory about the first game in my mind of like, I just remember the first time I played that game, like the visuals were so good. Like it looked like such a AAA game, even though it was a smaller indie studio. So I was going to ask you, like, because I really can't remember if they added or changed like some of the gameplay mechanics. Like, is there different things that you can do in the second game versus even Trials, I guess?
Yeah, I think Trials just amps it up because there's so many enemies in the levels with you at the same time, right? And the levels are more open and interconnected, whereas 1 and 2 is more linear in that way. And there's like when they have those enemies that are chasing you through the levels, it's usually just like throwing one at you. And then in Outlast 1, there's that section with like the two brothers who are coming after you.
Mm-hmm.
But like they're pretty simple in that way. But like three trials is throwing sometimes like 6 or 7 enemies in the level. You got the cop with the shock rod, and you got like all these the little guys, the psychos, like all these different things. The main new mechanic in 2, which is interesting because it doesn't make an appearance in Trials, is that on your video camera, because that whole mechanic is the same as the other games. Well, 3, you don't have a video camera, you have like the goggles, but same as 1, where you have the video camera, you're recording the different events, that's where your night light is coming from, is that on your camera you have a microphone, like a sound amplifier thing that you can turn on and off. And so you can use that to like find enemies through walls, where you'll like be in a building under a bed. You can point your camera in a direction, and you'll hear the guy like brr, 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 like mumbling under his breath, and you can hear him walking through the ground and stuff like that. So that's the main thing that's new, is that you can just like echolocate enemies in that way, and that adds to some freakiness of it. Where you'll be like, randomly looking around trying to find where enemies could be, and you'll hear some creepy person like singing in some faraway room, and like they're pretty far away, but this thing, goes pretty far and like through walls and whatnot. So that's the main new mechanic, and I feel like it's used quite well in the first half of the game, and then like there's like not really much to it in the third, like the second half of the game. I feel like it's less of a mechanic. So honestly, I don't think the game would have been much different if that wasn't in there at all. It adds a little bit of creepiness, adds a little bit of something to do, but it kind of just feels like they wanted to do something new, and that's what they went with. But I don't think it adds too much to the game, and that's really the only like mechanically new thing about the game. I would say it's still the same thing of like there's no combat, and you don't get any other equipment. You just have bandages and batteries. That's the only thing you're like picking up through the world. So not much new in the way of mechanics.
Yeah, no, I was curious because something like that I feel like is cool to just get another tool to find enemies. But I even remember in the first game, like I feel like the story gets to a point, especially at like right near the end when it's like the big climactic moment. The game feels like it's scary, but it feels less scary because it's just like, okay, I just got to sprint to like get to this area now, and like this is like the end of the game, like and you're not really focusing on like hide in barrels maybe anymore at that point. Like you're just kind of trying to get to the end. And I imagine, by that point in the game, I imagine it ends in a not a similar way, but like the ramped upness of the game definitely I imagine would feel that same way near the end, and you're kind of just disregarding those super stealthy like the finding enemy mechanics, right? When it's like, okay, well I know where the main enemy is because he's right fucking behind me. This is the end of the game. So
I just feel like the most open areas are early in the game, and so by the end of it, when it is more linear, that's where as you mentioned, like I am more incentivized to just sprint straight for the door because there's only one way to go. And a couple times you have to like get to a door, but then you also have to activate something first. You got to move something out of the way or pull some chain, and so you can't just run there and do that because that will take you time to do that action. But I think the other thing too is like when I went back to Outlast 1, especially playing after Trials, where Trials gets so intense with the number of enemies, I found that Outlast 1, like the sequences when the people are chasing you, which are very different than like the scripted like jump scare or like someone chasing you down a hallway, but you just have to get to the end. But when it's like a more open area, and that's when you're having to hide under tables or go in closets and lockers and things like that, I found that the enemy AI for that, when I went back to 1, just felt so basic and predictable. And I felt like it was very easy to like cheese it by just going in certain areas that were inaccessible. But I found with Outlast 2, those sequences where you have like the scarier enemies that will hunt you through the levels and you don't know exactly where you're supposed to go, I found them they're almost like too hard. Like I could not figure out how to get away from them. Like they would find me no matter where I was. Like there's one early on where you have to go through a town sequence, you have to go up to a building, activate some generator, and then you got to go back through the town. And then when you get to a certain, like you walk past, I had to do it multiple times, so I got pretty familiar with it. You walk past like a very specific balcony, and that'll activate the hunter enemy to come after you. She's like some creepy lady with like a charged up pickaxe. She's super duper strong. I don't know if you got far enough to encounter that character at all. But I found like once I'd activate her, there was no chance I could hide from her. Once she was activated, she would find me immediately. I could go in the darkest corner, I could go in a building under a table. She would just know where I was. So like the only way I could get past that sequence was to just kind of do a loop around and then like sprint past her and just try and get to the loading zone where she couldn't reach me anymore.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I found that there was more sequences like that where were really, really hard to hide in this game. And so I just had to like sprint past things too, which, adds some intensity, but I think I missed some of that from one in Trials.
Yeah.
Is more hiding in the closets and stuff, because that feels very Outlast to me, and that adds a lot of tension to it as well, where you never really know, like, am I safe to exit now? Like, have they left? You don't really know.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot scarier when it's like you actually have to be stealthy, and where it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna sprint, and then if she like hits you, like in the single player games, I guess it's kind of just one shot kill. In Trials, maybe you could tank a little bit more, some hits. You just kind of close your eyes and sprint. I'm so scared, but you just kind of take the hit and make it through. It's a little bit unfortunate, but I feel like there is a healthy medium that they can achieve in between, because in the first game, I remember it's like you go into a room, you go into a locker, the enemy's going to always choose the opposite locker that you're in, and then he just leaves.
Always the one right next to you.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, is he going to pick me? Well, if you're on your second playthrough of the game, you kind of know how it works now. So you're
exactly,
just kinda,
yeah.
I'm fine.
It took me out a little bit once again, because I played the games out of order and I like went to the more intense game first,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some of the sequences in this game are fantastic. There's another one in particular with that lady where even though she could get me, like I could sneak under a fence, and she wasn't small enough to do that. So there were certain areas I could actually hide. And then I had to like push some wagon to get over some fence. And that was intense of like, I don't know if I have much time to do this. Should I just push it for a little bit and then go hide again? And so there were some sequences that are amazing. But I think maybe a slight disappointment with the game is that like that first area is the best area in the game for me. I just love the visuals of it. I think the gameplay is the most intense there. The areas are the most open. And I just love the aesthetic of it. Like I love the creepy old village where you're going through and like cows are mutilated on the side, and it's like all this creepy shit is happening, and you still don't know exactly what's going on. It's good stuff. So I don't know. I think that was another thing too. And then the middle section with the woods, it was okay. It was probably my least favorite section of the main game. I actually liked the raft sequence. Funny enough,
that's funny. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what it was about it. Maybe it's because I was moving pretty quick. You're kind of cruising through the water.
Yeah,
your raft will get like stuck on some sand for bits. You got to walk around on the land and then jump down to a new area. So I liked that sequence. And then the mines, the last sequence of the game, I really enjoyed that area as well. There's some interesting areas there where enemies are, out in the level looking after you, but like it's such tight, narrow corridors. The rocks are like tumbling down from the roof above you. There's one sequence where you kind of like hide underwater, slowly sneak around and like activate some levers and whatnot. And that was a really good sequence. And then also, like, I know I sent you a YouTube video a couple months ago of like the Nutty Putty Cave disaster where some guy got like stuck in the cave.
Oh yeah,
There's a lot of sequences like that in this game. I've been watching a lot of those YouTube videos, getting freaked out of like people going cave diving, getting lost and dying, and so like crawling through these tight, narrow, rocky corridors with my only light being like my fading light on my camera. Those sequences, like, they really got under my skin just because I've been like hyping myself up on that kind of horror recently. So that worked really well for me. So overall, I really liked the final sequence of the game. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like it motivates me now to want to go back into it, because
it's a short game, man. Like you would plug through it in a weekend if you wanted to.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
For sure. Especially like I am so invested in the actual franchise, so like I got to jump back in there. And I did love the opening. Like I think they do such a good job at just like putting you in a situation that you just feel like you're fucked. Like there's no way out. And then as you mentioned, like as you get like more into the town, it's like, oh, I'm just more fucked. I should have just stayed at the helicopter and just died there.
Yeah.
I think it would have been easier that way. But no, that's cool to hear. And yeah, the games are really short. Like even the first game, I don't know, like what, 5 hours?
I think I beat it in 5 or 6 hours, and the DLC was another 2 hours on top of that.
And then you like comparable with the second game, you'd say?
Yeah, I think I feel like it took me like 8 hours. 8 or so hours. So kind of like the length of the first game with the DLC added in. And then the ending of the game, I don't obviously want to spoil it here. It's wild. I mean, the first game's ending is also equally insanely wild.
They go places.
I feel like the first game's ending is a bit more wild, but then the very end of this has some stuff in it that I didn't even know how to interpret it. I was like, what the heck just happened? Like, this must be some hallucination of some sort, because this doesn't make any sense. And so it was one of those ones that it wasn't quite to the fun of like, ooh, like it's fun to speculate on what happened there. I was more just like, that makes no sense to me. And so I looked up what some, looking up on Reddit and stuff, like what people's theories are. And it was disappointing because a lot of people were like, oh yeah, this ending, here's what it actually means. And where you get that from is that there was like some Outlast comic that like explains what happens at
Terrible.
the end of this.
I hate it.
And I'm like, that sucks. Like because there should have been a little bit more there. And I think it is interesting and cool actually hearing what that is. But it's like, I wish that was somehow actually in the game. And I don't know if that comic came out after or before Outlast 2. And it connects to the first game in a way, but in a way that I did not even pick up on. So I don't know if I think it might actually take place, like the location here might be close to where the mental hospital is. Yeah, but I don't know. Like that's something I feel like I didn't really connect with. And I also just, in general, the story of this game is like it's crazy religious fanatic types, which is kind of a trope I'm a little bored with at this point. And so I found in the first game, it was one I was reading every single note. But in this game, I was a little less into it because it was just like, Joseph's sacrifice for the Lord Savior. Like that kind of thing where I'm like, I don't really care so much about this. So I think in some ways the story was... Actually, in many ways, the story was a lot weaker than the first game. And then maybe my last point is like, I feel like this game does a lot less jump scares than Outlast 1. Outlast 1 is like jump scare city, and like it's effective, like it shocks your system. Obviously, that's what a jump scare is supposed to do. And this game relied less on that, and I still think it was able to be pretty terrifying in certain moments without relying on jump scares. So I was appreciative of that. I think part of it is the visuals and the atmosphere of the game is so effective that it helped adding to that, and just some of the intensity of certain sequences in the game. Once again, if it wasn't undercut by the annoying school sequences, it would have been even more effective. So overall, really, really good time. I'm glad I played through it. And I think, unfortunately, it might be last in my Outlast ranking just because of the school sequences, honestly. That really drags it down. But still, like, pretty close to Outlast 1 in terms of how much I enjoyed it overall. And then Trials was just so much fun playing with you guys and the co-op element of it. I think that one is my favorite. So yeah, I'm curious what they're going to do next for Outlast, man. Like, do you think they're going to stick with a multiplayer thing? Do you think the studio would make something different? Do you think they'd go back to a single-player experience? I'm not really sure, but I'm curious to see what they do next.
I am interested. I feel like it would be something tied to kind of what they've already set up, especially you mentioning that they, some way, shape, or form, the second game, somehow tied to the first game. Like, it seems like they're kind of invested in this universe that they're building. So my bet would be that and another single-player game. I think Trials was great, but...
very different type of experience.
Very different type of game, and I think you get a lot more of a just whole story when you do the single player story and focus in that sense. And it would be great to see just what they can do with modern engines, because as you mentioned, like the second game visually it looks so beautiful, and I feel like I thought the first game was like still like that top tier, and then when I played through it, it's like, okay, it's a little outdated, but again, it's 11 years ago, so I feel like it's nice that it holds up just the way it is. I think the darkness of the game really helps that a lot. A lot of the visuals are through like your night vision, so
that part of it is amazing. Like the lighting in these games are so well done, and I think that's where I was so impressed with the visuals of 2. Just the fog mixed with the lighting makes for like, that's the perfect blend. It's amazing.
When you get the eye glow, and you can like barely see something, you just see like the 2 eye glow. It's like, oh my god, it's such a terrifying visual. So they definitely nailed that even from the first game. But no, I definitely wanted to jump into the second game now. I feel like I just had no interest until basically now that we're talking about it. So it's exciting. Yeah,
it's worth checking out. Okay, cool. There's Outlast, and how about we take one last break here, and we come back and do a fun little topic here. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. I called this a fun little topic. This is a topic I feel like we could talk about for hours, but I kind of wanted to bring this up. It's been on my mind recently. So, Kirklin, Elder Scrolls 6. Okay, we're still years away, I presume, right? Like, there's no way this is coming out in the next...
Decades away. Who knows?
There's no way it's coming out until, like, at least 2028? Does that feel like a fair number to throw at it? Starfield just finished last year. They're doing DLC, right. But, like, it's probably their primary game over at Bethesda now, and it's like, how long have they been working on it? Hard to say. I just don't think there's any way it's coming out. There's no way it's coming out this, like, console generation.
I feel like it better come out by 2028. Like I just like Googled it and I'm looking at like, man, the announcement was 6 years ago now. Like I remember when we watched that
Yeah.
live in the Custardome and it's just like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, this is
That
so
was a
sad.
farce. That was
So
not
yeah,
real.
2028 it better be out or I'm gonna be just. I feel like it's one of those things where I've just kind of accepted that it will come out maybe in my lifetime, but like I definitely have no.
Yeah.
I'm not holding my breath by any means for,
We're
for
already
that
at
one.
13 years since Skyrim,
Jeez.
which is crazy. Like in that amount of time they did, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, we're all like pretty close to each other. Like 'cause
Yeah.
Oblivion was 2007, 6, something like that. Morrowind's 2002, 3, whatever it was. So it's like, yeah, already in that amount of time we've gone so far. And obviously it's because Starfield was thrown in the mix there rather than just Fallout and Elder Scrolls back to back. So that makes sense. And then like game development times have gotten so insane, but. Yeah, it's going to be, still quite a wait before we get this game. And we still don't really have any more information on it. I feel like it's not been confirmed, but it feels like Hammerfell is going to be the province setting for this game, at least the main province, if they just stick with one like they have in previous games. But yeah, I don't know. Like, there's a million different places we could go with this. But just off the hop, like, what are some of your top things that you're really hoping for from a sequel to Skyrim? I know it's a very broad question, so take it wherever you want.
I feel like if I had to choose one thing, I would say like an upgraded engine. I love the Elder Scrolls and Fallout engine just because of like the fact that like those are like what you're getting from those engines.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of know how to cheese it. You know how to interact with the world. Like there's just a certain je ne sais quoi about it. Like there's better engines out there, but I feel like. When I'm jumping into Skyrim, like I want to be able to pick up a pot and put it over someone's head or something and just kind of interact with the world that way, pick up a character in kind of a goofy way, but like you're still able to interact with the world. I don't want to lose that by any means. Like I don't want it to make it feel like a completely different game, but definitely just evolved and make it more modern, especially that, Starfield came out. I never played Starfield. I don't know what the engine was like in that, but I guess the most recent Bethesda game that I would have played would have been Fallout 4 and like you still can't really climb up ladders, you just interact with it and then you're up the ladder. Like just stuff like that, or that make it feel a lot more modern. And really just put a lot more creative freedom in the hands of the player. Like Fallout 4 is a big deal that you could get like layered armor, for example. And it's just like, man, why has this not been a thing forever? Like obviously I would be expecting that because it was in Fallout 4. And I think that's something that you'd really want to have. Like I've been experiencing that in mods that I've played in Skyrim, but I want that out of the base game and just a lot of stuff like that, like creative ways that maybe you can manipulate your different armory, whether it's magic or spells. Like was it Oblivion that you could like create your own spells, like just stuff kind of like that. Skyrim was a big deal that you could have like two independent things going on with your hands. I really love that mechanic, so just maybe expanding upon that. And yeah, it's definitely like my one thing. If I had to choose, it would be just the overall engine. Like I want it to feel a lot more modern. I don't want to be feeling like I'm playing a 2011 engine in 2028 that I would imagine like the game would actually be. So stuff like that. I love these Elder Scrolls games so much. Like I am expecting to just really love the whole overall interaction with NPCs and just the whole questing of it. Like that's kind of a given. I feel like I'll be extremely disappointed if I'm not loving that aspect to it. But the engine is something that I do really want to jump in, because even like from Skyrim to Fallout 4, I feel like there wasn't that much different. Like they
I feel like maybe one of the big new things was like the settlement customization and building.
Right.
That was like maybe one of the big improvements to, because it's like they've used the creation engine for such a long time now, which is like their own in-house engine. And it's like, they upgrade it in between every game, new features get added to it. I'm sure like some random feature that we wouldn't even think about that they added in Fallout 4 is now just like part of that engine. And then they can just bring it right into Starfield right off the hop. They kind of integrate that stuff. Like I don't see them switching engines really at any point when it comes to like a Starfield or Fallout or Elder Scrolls. Like if they're trying to make these kind of games, I think part of the feeling of it is that level of freedom, as you've talked about, which is something that is so established with it. But then there obviously is like a ton of shortcomings with it. And I think they have gotten better ish of like bugs and glitches and things like that. Like Starfield still had plenty of them, but I think it was less of a glitchy, buggy experience. But there were certain things like NPC faces and eyes were like really janky in a way that's like, come on, like this makes the game feel way more dated than it should right off the hop. So I'm curious to see what other kind of improvements there is to the engine overall. Like, there was definitely a big thing with Starfield was just the random generation of planets, like how it would create landscapes and stuff. And that's something that like I don't really want to be integrated into Elder Scrolls. Like, I hope that they hand build the whole map, and maybe there are certain areas that they use some random generation just to like chart it out originally, and then they go over and iterate and add things to it, and obviously throw caves and points of interest in there. And I hope that we don't get as much of that randomization that Starfield had, which, you know, it probably won't, given the type of maps that they're dealing with. And that Starfield, part of their core ethos was like, we need 1,000 planets, therefore we need, you know, it's quantity over quality. And I don't think that's going to happen with Elder Scrolls in that same way. So that's something to hope for. And it's interesting what you mentioned about like armor and customization. That I would definitely love if custom spell making came back. That was definitely a thing in Morrowind and Oblivion. But even like, I remember like in Morrowind, you like the amount of armor you have was like double that of Skyrim, I think, where you have like boots, you have greaves, you have a cuirass, you have bracers, you have pauldron, you have helmet, like you have all these things on like both sides too. So you have so much more. And like once you like enchanted your gear, you could just make your character insane with all these different enchantments and stuff. And it feels like each game they've kind of slowly pulled away a little bit of that. So yeah, I think it would be cool if they did a little bit more of that, add a little more customization in terms of the character stuff, which I feel like is something that they really did embrace a bit more with Fallout 4, is like the customization of weapons. I'd be curious to see what they do, because obviously a big thing with Skyrim was like the crafting was much more improved, which is just not even something you could do in the previous games. That was a new feature there. And I feel like Fallout 4 did a good job of expanding on that. I feel like Starfield kind of stayed the course, didn't add much on top of it, but I would be curious to see if they do more customization beyond just like enchanting a weapon in an Elder Scrolls game. Like if you could customize certain parts of it, like, oh, I want to choose like a different handle or choose a different, I don't know, just little features like that could be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, in the way that like Fallout 4 had like really scrappy looking weapons, it'd be cool if you could do that as well. Like take a wooden stick, put some random spiky things on it, and create your own sort of weapons would be really interesting.
So it's funny, my my evolution of a gamer, I used to fucking hate when items had durability. I hated it so much. It was so annoying. You have a favorite sword, it breaks, and now you can't even repair it because it's just like, no, you repaired it the maximum amount of times, can't do it anymore. I've definitely changed on that sense because there's just a great strategy to it. Like Breath of the Wild, right? Like that one has a durability factor to it, and then of course things like Fire Emblem and like those other tactics games, like you do have a certain level of it. And I feel like it would actually be really interesting to have it in an Elder Scrolls game that you kind of have to maintain your things, whether it's cleaning it or like just repairing it.
That was another classic, like Skyrim just removed that, but they had already done it. So
they did in a previous Elder Scrolls
Morrowind
game.
and Oblivion had that for sure. We had to maintain your gear as you were going.
That's really cool. So yeah, bring that back. I think that would be. There's a lot of RPG elements that I feel like we've been getting away from just in recent RPGs. Of course, you know, not every RPG does that, but like we've already mentioned how they had spell crafting, got rid of that. The armor, now it's just like iron armor, it's everything, but you were just listing like Morrowind. It was a lot more individual. So things like that, I would kind of want us to go. Like I don't think we'll really go back.
That's the thing, right? It's hard to picture them wanting to go backwards like that. They're so iterative and wanting to move forward and improving in their way and like simplifying things at the same time.
So, yeah, but like there's some great stuff that are in those older RPGs that I hope they're at least having those conversations of what can we take and, you know, still move forward. But like I don't know, that there is a lot of things that fans I think have been wanting them to bring back. And like something for me that I would really want, this is kind of a more overall story thing for Elder Scrolls 6, is I mean, I've played Skyrim thousands of hours, so it's tough to like say, but like I don't love how you're just like the chosen one in that storyline. Like it fits for the main story, you're the Dragonborn, but I hate how like, you know, if you could literally do a jack of all trades where you're like, I'm the Dragonborn, I'm the leader of the Thieves Guild, I'm the leader of the college, I'm the lead, like you're just the guy, you're like just the chosen one. And I think you can still do that with the main story, but I want it to feel like each playthrough I do is unique. And of course that's something that like Morrowind, for example, would have been, because you really have to choose like an archer character. And that's
it's still possible to be the leader of all the things. Well, not all of them, because you have to. Some of them you could like only pick and choose. It was still possible, but it was harder because of like stats. Like you would need, I don't know, to get even promoted to like the top tier of Fighters Guild, you need like 40 endurance or something. So it's straight up,
Okay.
if you didn't have that stat, you just like couldn't get further along in that guild quest line.
Yeah.
But it was still possible. So it's something that they've always kind of allowed you to do in Elder Scrolls.
Especially now that I'm playing like Baldur's Gate, right? Like there's permadeath on like certain
Yeah.
characters that you just completely miss an entire storyline. I'm not expecting it to go that full length, but like in Skyrim, like you really like there's certain decisions that is like it's I guess like the Civil War would be one that you like choose a side, and like that's kind of what happens there. I guess the Dawnguard DLC kind of as well, like you choose the vampires versus
Right.
the vampire hunters. But for the most part, like that's kind of like the most different of like a playthrough. Like even you
Yeah,
and
and
I
they're
could
pretty
have.
self-contained. Like that's not going to
Yeah.
affect anything about the Fighters Guild or the Mages
A
Guild,
random
that kind of
guard
stuff.
might be like, "Oh, you're the leader of the Dawn Guard," or
Yeah.
like you know
Yeah.
but like that's not a story. Like there's nothing story related or I guess consequence to like the overall story what's going on there. So I would want us to have more of that because I'm going to be playing many different playthroughs, I would imagine, of Elder Scrolls 6 unless it's just a massive stinker. But even then, I would probably just play it on PC or something, get some nice mods to make like my own experience. Because like if I play through something like Skyrim now, I'm kind of already capping, you know, like I won't do like a college quest line, but I'm choosing to do that because it just fits the like I'm kind of just making a choose your own adventure on this Skyrim playthrough, which like I'm fine with that. I'm still able to enjoy it, but I think that it should feel out the gate a lot more of a unique experience. Like I want to be comparing my adventure to yours and not be, oh, I did a complete, like I'm more of an evil character, but we had the exact same ending, like, you know, like the exact same interaction with this character. Like I do want them to maybe make it a more of an incentive to make multiple playthroughs, which it like they kind of were trying to get rid of that for Skyrim, right? Like that's why you had your one character that could just be everything, and
which is such a disappointing thing, I think, especially for Elder Scrolls, where you have all these different races that you can play as. Like I feel like that's built so much more for like that's where they'll never be able to like have a voice protagonist for an Elder Scrolls game because like they eventually do condense it, so like certain elven races have the same voice actor who's like playing them for all the dark elves, high elves have the same, but I still think that's something that they'll never be able to fully do, whereas like an orc is never going to sound like a wood elf, and so like what are you going to do? You're going to hire multiple actors of male and female version, just like so I don't think we're ever going to go to that point. Obviously like Starfield like moved away from some of that too. So yeah, that's something that like I feel like there is element to that. Starfield kind of had that like with all the quest lines, there like all the side quest type things. Like towards the end of it, you had to make some big decision of who you're going to side with, but there isn't that element that you mentioned of like, okay, well that would not affect some other guild in the game. Like maybe it has some effect on some small part of the world. That is something that I'd like to see more of for sure. It's just more like interconnection between the guilds, and yeah, like you can only get to like a certain level. I also want there to be better rewards, maybe not the right word, but more features tied to becoming the leader of a guild, because I feel like once you do that, it's just over and then there's like nothing to do. But I think it'd be cool if you could have more of like a management system of like, okay, I'm the leader and I can take these two mage people and I'm going to send them on this quest to go do this thing, or I don't know, you would have to make it a bit more like random generation-y, but that is something that they've, you know, improved and gotten a lot better on. Like obviously Starfield has a lot of that. I don't know how much of that there was in Fallout 4, but Skyrim obviously had a ton of that too, with like the Radiant quests for each guild. Like, you know, there's infinitive amount of Thieves Quest guilds you could do, or yeah, Thieves Guild quests you could do if you went and did that. But it was like break into this place and like change this ledger or like steal this one item, and it was, you know, it was something to do, but it was kind of random generation. Hopefully that's something that they'd be a lot better at, you know, given that it's going to take like 15, 16 years in between the last game. You would think a lot of that stuff would be improved. So yeah, that is something I would definitely like to see. But I was a big fan of all the different guild quest lines in Starfield. So it makes me feel pretty hopeful for where we're going to be at with Elder Scrolls 6 in terms of just the general quality of some of those things.
Yeah. I guess like just piggyback on what you're saying there is like, I would want maybe more endgame content, and maybe that's like pretty maybe it's asking too much because the game is so expansive. Like there is so much to do right then and there, but it's mostly just when you get to an end of a quest line. Because I find if I'm doing like a College of Winterhold playthrough, for example, I like don't want to end it because it's the most exciting when you're in the middle of those quest lines. Like just even the way you interact with characters, because a lot of the time, you know, these individual quest lines for a guild for like they're not that long, So like in a couple hours you could go from a novice to the leader of the college, and like you just will never interact with these people again. So like you could literally power through that in like a couple hours. And I don't know, my realism factor in me is just has grimes with that. So I usually try and like prolong them. Like I'll probably do a lot more of those side quests in between to just kind of stay involved with it.
Yeah, because I think like in Skyrim, one of the really cool features of it, and it's kind of an understated thing, is the orc stronghold areas, and how these are just like essentially something that is gated to a specific race. Like obviously other races can interact with them, but in the way that you could interact as an orc versus not being an orc, like that's a really cool thing. But I can't think of like many other examples of in Skyrim how they're incentivizing like different characters, or like, oh man, I got to replay the game to see how that goes. Like other than like that main quest in terms of do you pick the Stormcloaks or the Imperials, which also feels like a pretty binary decision. So yeah, I'd like to see more of that kind of thing. And it makes me curious because obviously that was such a big part of Starfield's design, is the New Game Plus element to it, where you're like rolling into a new universe, and you know, some of your actions are carried over, but for the most part it's like a new fresh universe. But then there is like random things that can change or happen, and I don't know, like I don't know how they would implement that with Elder Scrolls. It might be a bit harder, especially because like I don't even know how you roll credits in some of these like Elder Scrolls games. I can't even think of like the moments that it happens. But that would be so cool, and that's like a totally different game. But imagine a game where you're playing through, and like, you know, Skyrim, you have the companion quest line. You go through and do that on one character. You become the leader, and let's say that like you beat the game now. You've like rolled credits. You roll into New Game Plus, and like in this New Game Plus, like that character that you made has like become the leader of the companions,
baby.
and now that interacts with the world differently. And like I don't, that's like a totally different game, and I feel like you'd need a much smaller scale game that could pull that kind of thing off, given that it is kind of quantity over quality for some of these things. But I don't know, it makes me curious how much they went so hard on that for Starfield, and New Game Plus was like, that was a completely unique mechanic I've never seen another game do. It was super cool, and I'd be curious to see like how that would translate to Elder Scrolls and how you would incorporate something like that. And I don't know, if they try, I would be really curious to see what that did, is like somehow the actions of your character affect the world that last among characters or playthroughs. Like I would love to see that.
That'd be so cool, especially that like these games kind of feel endless just with the amount of quantity that's in there. But it would be really cool if that's like a gameplay mechanic, like it actually incentivizes you to keep coming back, because the world will just keep changing based on what a certain character did. And like it'd be kind of cool that you could, you know, how I was saying that like you're kind of the chosen one, so the whole world revolves around you. It would be nice if that's not the case, and like a certain story revolves around a character that you played, but then you can kind of feel those effects elsewhere if you're playing another character. So I really love that idea. That's actually something that is that would be really refreshing overall, I think, because it's something that no Elder Scrolls or Fallout game has done before.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the chosen one-ness of it all, like Morrowind's kind of a weird one where it's like it's a chosen one storyline, but it also is quite ambiguous. It's like, are you the chosen one, or did you just like do all the things that they said the chosen one would do, and then so you kind of just like manifested it for yourself? And it's always like a fun ambiguous part that I've liked about Morrowind. And then Oblivion was kind of weird, where like the chosen one was like someone else, and you're like supporting them kind of, right? But you are still kind of a chosen one because the emperor like had a vision of you and all this stuff. But I think it was like interesting, there was like one layer removed of the chosen oneness of it, but obviously none of the things progress in that world if you're not the one who makes them happen. And then Skyrim went like full on into the chosen one part. Fallout has always been more like small personal tales, right? Where it's like Fallout 4 is you're just a guy and you're just trying to get your son back, you know? And it's like, that's like what the main quest is, and then it spirals out into all these other things. And then Starfield, I don't know, I guess there's like a little bit of chosen one personness to it, but I think it is a bit more endless in that way because of the multiple universes and timelines and things. And since it's more sci-fi, I think it's a bit easier to, you know, cheese some of that stuff with it being the same. So I don't know which way they're going to go with that. In terms of, I imagine that I'm expecting being the chosen one and just gonna have to deal with that. So I've kind of prepared myself for it. But related to that, with the chosen one angle of Skyrim, so much of that is related to the dragons, and that was like the biggest marketing beat of Skyrim was, look at these dragons, isn't this crazy and cool? And the whole world and story revolves around it. Do you think dragons are going to make an appearance in the next Elder Scrolls game, or was that a one-off feature?
I think it really. I mean, I guess going off of like what the chronological order would be, it would be after the events of Skyrim because they've always
Presumably,
progressed
yeah.
forward, right?
Yeah.
That's been the case though, right? Everyone, I guess, other than Elder Scrolls Online, that was kind of the.
Yeah, I don't.
The
I think that.
outlier.
I think that's more prequel territory because I think
Yeah.
Morrowind is like not blasted by the volcano yet. So yeah, but I think there's like 200 years difference maybe between like Oblivion, Skyrim. Like I don't know. It's
Yeah.
such a long amount of time that they like there might be a book in Skyrim that references the Oblivion Crisis, but like
Yeah.
that's about as close as connection you're gonna get.
Yeah, so and then at the end of like Skyrim, like you don't just end all of dragons, like of the main storyline. Like you can still interact with dragons. So in my mind, there's no reason why they wouldn't be in the world.
Yeah.
Obviously, it makes sense why they would be in Skyrim, but I think it's totally fit, especially if we are going to Hammerfell. Like that's basically next door neighbors with Skyrim, right? I think it's oh my god, what's the Breton cap?
High Rock.
Yeah, there you go. I used to be so good with my geography of Elder Scrolls, but
Well, it's been 13
when you're
years since
waiting
the last
13
game.
years, yeah, exactly. You kind of get fuzzy on these details. So in my mind, there's no reason why there wouldn't be, and honestly, I would say yes. You could expect to see some dragons here, whether it's I was gonna say like a skeleton dragon, but those are also really only focused on like in the dragon. Oh my god, what are they called? The dragon wizard guys, and like that's a very Skyrim like thematic thing of just like the Draugr and the dragon lord, or I forget what they're called now. Dragon
The
priest?
Draugrs, yeah.
Dragon priests, I think that's what they are.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
You're right. There's a lot of interlap between the border of Hammerfell and Skyrim. Also, a lot with Cyrodiil, which is where Oblivion takes place, of course.
It would be cool if we did have dragons. It would kind of only be in like that north, like northeast section, maybe like more.
Because I'm sure that's
going to
be a more snowy sort of zone, right?
For sure, right? Because in was it Oblivion that had like that actual Skyrim town? Or it was
Bruma
like on the
right here on the map.
Bruma.
Bruma is like a snow-covered
I remember you talking
village.
about Bruma on our snow episode.
Love Bruma, yes. Yeah, dude, this area in Hammerfell looks cool. This kind of like almost Italy-like island. It's not an actual island. It is connected, but that's going to be a fun zone to explore, I'm sure.
More maritime-y, right? Because that's something that I haven't really seen much in my Elder Scrolls experience.
Yeah, I like because Cyrodiil, obviously, it's like you get so many types of biomes. I guess, well, maybe not a lot of very forest areas, but they do feel very distinct areas, and I feel like Hammerfell will probably do for that because like this is a lot bigger than I thought. I feel like it's been a while since I've looked at the map. I thought Hammerfell was much smaller than it is, but it's like about the same size as Skyrim on this map. So,
and then
I mean, obviously the scale is going to be bigger, I'm sure, than any of these other games, but.
I'm pretty sure too Hammerfell is where Orgrimmar is, which is where like the orc capital is. Like it's just kind of like
really cool.
It's just like a thing in one of the provinces. It's either High Rock, or Hammerfell, or maybe even in between that. But I know they were like at war. Like the orcs, for example, were at war a lot with the Hammerfell people. I'm so bad with my Elder Scrolls knowledge right now. What are they even called?
I think this might be the place you're talking about, Ursmar, like in High Rock technically, but
right
on the border.
I think that there's no reason why that couldn't be in this game. Honestly,
I would love to see the next game not be just one province. Like I think it'd be cool if Hammerfell and High Rock, even if it wasn't the full provinces, but just like having some border conflict there, or like seeing the different cultures or the changes between them, I think would be really cool. And like, I don't know, I think that would be a good time for them to do something like this, especially with like specifically High Rock and Hammerfell seem like two fun places that would be interesting to kind of play between the two.
Well, because in Skyrim, actually, in the Dragonborn DLC, I think it is, like you go back to Morrowind in that DLC.
Right.
I don't know if it's like the Northern Island or whatever it is, and then in Morrowind, you're in Morrowind the whole thing, right? Like in one of the DLCs, you go to an island, but I think it's still a part of Morrowind.
So Morrowind, technically, the province of Morrowind is like it's like the huge U-shaped area, and then like the big inner island, and then like that small little island I forget the name of in the kind of northwest of it. But in Morrowind, like the base game, you only actually play on the inner island, and then the two DLC packs. One takes you to that island. God, what the hell is that called? And that's like very Skyrim-like. It's a very snowy area. And then one of the DLCs takes you to like pretty much 2 cities on the mainland. So you never actually see the whole province in the game of Morrowind. You only see one, maybe like half of it, honestly. Like there's still a lot of uncharted territory.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see the island you're talking about, but I don't see a name.
I should. That's another thing. I'm a bad Morrowind fan. I should know that off the top of my head. But
no,
Solstheim,
that would be
Solstheim is the name of it. Yeah,
and
so
that's
it's
where
kind
you
of in
go
between Skyrim and Morrowind. Yeah,
that's where you go in the Skyrim DLC. In Dragonborn, you go to Solstheim. So
right.
they take you back
I
to
don't
it.
think I ever actually played the Dragonborn DLC.
Oh,
for
it's a good
Skyrim.
one too. I definitely would recommend it with the Dragon.
I mean,
I actually quite like that one.
We have many years before Elder Scrolls 6. We've
Yeah.
talked about like retrospectives for some of these Elder Scrolls games,
Hell
which is
yeah.
such a big undertaking. But I definitely, I want to do. I want to get you playing Morrowind at some point, and I also definitely want to jump back and do like a bigger discussion on Skyrim. That could even be like a multiple episode long thing just on Skyrim, like multiple episodes just for that one retro.
For every Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah,
honestly.
we have a lot of time, but yeah, stay tuned, everyone. Like closer to Elder Scrolls 6, we will definitely do some more retrospectives for these games in like a deeper way. Because that's crazy that I've never played that DLC. I played the Dawnguard one, but I did not play the Dragonborn DLC. So it's crazy.
I think
just never got around to it.
Yeah. I do love the idea though of having like multiple provinces and even like having, because we're gonna have so many different like side quest storylines and stuff like that. Like have one on like the orcs. I feel like the orcs is an avenue that I haven't really delved too deeply on. Like I don't know if I've ever even made like an orc character. So every time I've come across those orc settlements in Skyrim, like I'm just kind of an outsider, and that's the extent that I go on that. But it would be really cool to kind of get into more of their I don't know how they structure their encampments and how like just the hierarchy of how that works.
Yeah, because I guess they don't have a province of their own. I never really thought about that.
No, and that's like a big thing is like they just keep getting like raided, like Orgrimmar. It just keeps getting like messed up, and then they have to move it. So it's been like moved a couple times. They're like
that could
homeland,
be such a
which is really cool. Yeah,
main story conflict of a game like that.
Totally.
I would love to see that. That'd be so cool.
100%. Yeah, they've kind of. Years ago, I went on like a deep dive of just like the history of Orgrimmar, and they've kind of just been screwed over, like their whole history, and it's poor orcs, but it'd be cool.
Yeah, thinking about that more, man, because I think one of my biggest predictions for what I think Elder Scrolls 6 is gonna maybe not focus on, but I think a big part of it is going to be the settlement building, like customization of that, because with the what was it called, Hearthfire DLC for Skyrim, that added like where you could build a house from scratch, add rooms on it. You could never like move furniture around in a very specific way.
No.
It was kind of like preset builds. So I think that's absolutely something they're going to change with the next one, is be able to like place furniture, which is cool because that was a really fun, interesting DLC. And then obviously Fallout 4 took that to the next level where you could build settlements from scratch. And then Starfield did the same thing where you can build like moon bases, or not just moon bases anywhere you want. And that's a pretty expansive feature, and like there is a lot of fun customization. I had so much fun in Starfield building out houses, whether that was a settlement or just like in a house, placing individual furniture around, decorating it, putting all my collectibles and fun things in there. And so that's something that I'm really looking forward to in the next Elder Scrolls, is building that out. And man, that could work so interestingly with like that orc. We're just talking about like orc strongholds. Imagine that where you're like claiming territory, parts of the map, building out different structures, and like having different visual styles for them based on like the faction or race that you're working with, and building out these different structures. Because that's something that I've always kind of like, I dabble with in these games. Like I said, I did a decent amount of it in Starfield, but I didn't build out tons of bases, and mostly just because like gathering all the resources to make these things is such a lot of work.
It feels like an end game thing, at least for Fallout for me, because I just never have all the materials. I'm like, I'm just going to go about my day.
Yeah, exactly. They give you ways to like generate resources and stuff, but it takes a lot of effort. So I might just like, when the next Elder Scrolls comes out, get a mod that just lets me build without having to worry about that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's something I think I'd really want to get into, because even in Fallout 4, I didn't mess around with it too much. But then there are other games, like even Grounded recently. I had so much fun building bases in that game. So I definitely am gonna go pretty ham on that. Like even the Hearthfire DLC, I remember getting so invested in that. It was just such a fun feature in Skyrim. Something I've always loved, claiming houses in these games, as I did a video on that recently for Morrowind. But it's always highly limited. And a lot of it is like in your mind palace of imagination in terms of how much this house is working out for you. You know, Skyrim or Oblivion, you could actually buy houses, but Skyrim went pretty hard with that feature as well. So yeah, that's something I'm very much looking forward to because I just know that's going to be part of it. I would be disappointed if it wasn't part of it. That's how sure I feel that they're going to add a feature like that next time around. What else did I want to mention? I think in terms of the RPG systems of it, of course, I kind of expect at this point that like each Elder Scrolls game is kind of getting a little bit less deep with its mechanics, trying to make it a little bit more simplified, but then also they make the combat better every time, so it's kind of a give and take. But I was really impressed by Starfield's RPG system, the way you're leveling up, the different skills, how limited your character feels at the start of the game versus when you get, 40 skill points and the way your character improves and changes. So that's something I think I'm really excited for in the next Elder Scrolls. I was maybe a bit doom and gloom after Fallout 4, like, oh man, I don't like where they're going with these RPG systems, but Starfield kind of reignited some of my belief in that. So I'm excited to see what they do there. I think the one thing I would love to see after all these years playing Elder Scrolls games is like there's never been a new race to play as. It's always just like the 8 or 9 that you have. And like, what do you do unless you do like a prequel where you add dwarves or like snow elves is one that I think would be cool. Like before the Falmer with a Falmer, like what would they look like as a separate playable race? But it's like, I don't think they would go that far in the past. But I mean, a storyline around like the disappearance of the dwarves and like that being the main pull of the game where you can actually play as a dwarf would be so cool. I don't expect that's something they would do. That's like my pipe dream though, is like somehow incorporate a way, whether it's like some weird time travel thing, I don't know. But I would love to see like a new playable race in one of these games. That would be fun.
That'd be really cool, especially like if they, I don't know, incorporate it into the story, like because a lot of these races are kind of extinct now or like changed, but I feel like because they are just so like unknown, like you don't know much about them, I feel like those have always been like the most exciting things to kind of explore for me. So
I feel like even if there was like crossovers, like I feel like there's never been like, this is the child of an Argonian and a Nord, and here you go, here's some like interesting, like I've never even thought about that until now, but how many times must that have happened in these games and we just never see what that looks like?
It's funny, they actually have an in-game book that explains that. Like it says that you always they always take like the physical traits from the mother. That's why you never have half races. It's really easy, exactly. But at least they wrote the book in there.
That would be cool if they made a system like that work using some. I mean, these character creators are so in depth and funky, and you can make such abominations that why wouldn't you be able to take like half of an Argonian feature, half of a orc features and combine them together? That would be cool. That's something that I want now. I didn't even think about that until right now, but I think that would be really cool to get like kind of half crossover races. That'd be really fun.
Yeah, that'd be
and sweet. Like how that would affect your stats too, and the kind of predispositions that you have.
Totally,
that'd be really interesting. Once again, Kirklin, this is something we could talk about for hours. But anything else you wanted to mention for today? Anything that was at the top of your mind here?
I don't think so. You brought up a couple things that I wasn't really thinking of that just kind of got me excited, and it's unfortunate we have these conversations because it's like, oh, I'm excited now. I'm excited to see what happens. Pure speculation, but it's also like, fuck, I gotta wait so long for it. So, yeah, I don't want to say like I am excited for like us to finally get a trailer because when it comes out, I will be getting it. They kind of have me by the balls in that sense, but. It's unfortunate that it's just taking so long. And is what it is, I guess.
It is what it is. Yeah, I wonder because there was just like that mobile game, which is kind of like Fallout Shelter, but for Elder Scrolls that was just released, kind of came out of nowhere. I wonder if we'll get another spin-off other than Elder Scrolls Online expansions, like in between now and that. There's obviously been like rumors of like an Oblivion remaster, and that would be cool. And that would be a great way to hold us over for sure. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully there is something else Elder Scrolls related that comes out prior to, just given that we're going to have to wait for so many more years on this next one. But yeah, it's funny. I feel like this topic I just bring up every once in a while because I just want to talk about Elder Scrolls, and I need it in my life, and there's just been so little new content to actually break down. So always fun to have these conversations. But yeah, as I said, definitely more Elder Scrolls conversations to happen closer to when this game's actually happening, and some of these retrospectives I'm excited to get into. So Kirklin, thank you for joining me. This is a fun episode. Thank you everyone for listening. And yeah, we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.